I'm just going to keep my video off, but
Okay.
I'll be here.
I'll probably turn mine off when Liz starts speaking too, just so there's not a bunch of extra faces. But if I pop up, then you'll know I want to chime in or something.
Yeah, it's a great signal. Just gonna run and get more coffee before we start.
Well, it's 10 o'clock. We'll get started here in just a second. We'll see if anyone's potentially waiting to jump on. Thank you all for being here. Okay, I think we can get started this morning. I wanted to thank everyone who may be logging in or watching the recorded video. I'm Tiffany Kranz. I'm the city clerk for the city of Napa. We're here this Sunday morning to have a redistricting workshop. We'll get started here in a second. I did want to start by saying that live interpretation is available for this workshop via a Spanish channel. We also have an English channel available. Regardless of which language you prefer, you'll want to select the appropriate language channel through the translation button at the bottom of your screen. The button looks like a globe in the Zoom window, and you can simply click the language channel you prefer. I will now also introduce Elizabeth, one of our interpreters, to provide the instructions in Spanish. Great. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. So this morning we have a couple of goals. We're going to receive a presentation from Liz Stitt of Redistricting Partners, who is our consulting demographer. We're going to hopefully have some interactive questions where we'll be able to answer that we'll be able to answer for you, so we can get your feedback. You'll receive a mapping tools training, and again, feel free to ask us any questions that you'd like. While the city did recently, back in May of 2020, switch to district elections, that process was conducted using 2010 census data. As many of you may know, that in 2020, a new census was conducted, which then required us to redistrict and go through the process all over again to make sure our lines still are follow the requirements under the Fair Maps Act, and to get your community engagement on the lines. I know some of you are still getting used to the districts, but we're looking for feedback on the lines that currently exist, or what suggested changes you'd like to see made for the next 10 years. You all are experts on the community. You know more about your neighborhood. So we'd love to hear your feedback. This is once a decade opportunity to participate in. So we appreciate your participation and look forward to hearing from you. This is an interactive meeting. If you do have a question, you can use the Q&A feature in the Zoom. You can also raise your hand and we'll be sure to get to you. There will be an open time at the end of the presentation, but if something does pop up during Liz's presentation and you'd like to get your question answered, please do raise your hand or type in the chat and we'll make sure to get back to you. So I will now turn this over to Liz Stitz, and thank you again all for joining us.
Great, thanks, Tiffany. Good morning, everyone. So as Tiffany said, my name is Liz Stitt. I am a part of the demography firm, Redistricting Partners, and we're helping the City of Napa redistrict. So things we're going to be going over today: redistricting basics, and then redistricting the city, traditional redistricting principles, so these guidelines that help us during the redistricting process, communities of interest and why that's relevant to you. Then we're going to get into Districtor. This is the mapping tool that the City of Napa is using for its residents to draw their own maps. Then we're going to talk about public testimony and how you can best deliver it through multiple vehicles. And then finally, the public hearing schedule. So first and foremost, what is redistricting? So redistricting is the process of adjusting district lines every 10 years after the release of the US Census data. Folks tend to be a little bit more familiar with this happening at the federal or state level, so congressional seats or assembly and Senate seats. But this absolutely has to happen at a local level as well. So we are rebalancing the lines for city council. So even though Napa just went through this process a couple of years ago, we now have to use the 2020 data, as Tiffany went over at the beginning. And beyond creating districts of equal population, redistricting also serves to empower local communities and preserve voting rights. So these redistricting principles are what we use in the process to ensure that everything is fair and prevent gerrymanders. So this is under the Fair Maps Act that we are required to use these criteria. So first and foremost, each district has to be relatively equal in size. And we use the US Census data to determine equal population. So we're not just looking at citizens, we're not just looking at voters, we're looking at total population. Next, each district has to be contiguous. Contiguous essentially means the district is one whole piece and that you're not skipping and jumping over districts to make one district. Then we want to follow, or excuse me, we want to maintain communities of interest. And this is where outreach to communities within the City of Napa is so critical. As Tiffany said, you are the experts in your community. So getting information from you on what is so important, what is so unique about your community, and why you should be maintained together during this redistricting process. Then we want to follow city and census designated places when possible, and then keep districts compact. And this is where we are avoiding those funny looking shapes. The definition of compact in California is don't bypass nearby populations for a more distant one. And so maintain communities of interest is essentially why we're here today. We want to hear from community members about your neighborhood, about your community. So we're going to get more into that. And hopefully you can tell us a little bit more about your area. So communities of interest, it's defined as a group of people, a neighborhood, a community who have similar policy interests and would benefit from being redistricted together. We like to think of them as building blocks for districts. This could include ethnic and language minority groups, but really this is supposed to be a subjective and open-ended definition to be as inclusive as possible. Of course, under the Federal Voting Rights Act, there are protected classes, and this includes Latinos, Asians, and African Americans. But while communities of interest may include race, it cannot be the predominant factor in drawing district boundaries. So I like to include this slide to show people how inclusive and expansive communities of interest are. This is by no means an exhaustive list, but it's very diverse. So you have tourism areas, school districts, historical communities, neighborhoods, media markets. So I usually like to say, if you could make the argument that your community is a community of interest, then it probably is. Unless it's one of these three groups. So again, under the Fair Maps Act, to keep things above board and to prevent gerrymanders, it explicitly prohibits these three groups from being considered a community of interest. So political party affiliation, incumbents, political candidates, they cannot be considered a community of interest. And again, that's there to prevent partisan and incumbent gerrymandering. And then the next part, while it's not prohibited under the Fair Maps Act, it's just really hard to draw. Groups of similarly minded people who do not share a geographic location or are citywide. So remembering that we want to protect the voice of a community, and if this community is 80, 90, 100% of the city, then that's a little less helpful for the demographers. And then when you are preparing for your own testimony, we recommend thinking about these three questions before you testify, either online or in a meeting. So, does the community have a shared culture, characteristic, or bond? Lately, over the last year, we've been hearing people give testimony about how their communities have come together during COVID-19 or during wildfires, and they talk about the resources that they share. Personal stories like that tend to be very impactful, and it gives you the opportunity to talk about the shared bonds and characteristics and what makes you different from the surrounding, or makes your community different from the surrounding areas. Next, is the community geographic in nature? Can it be mapped? So remembering that we're trying to avoid splitting communities, some kind of street boundaries or landmarks would be immensely helpful in this process. So if you can tell us street names that separate your community from another, that would be so helpful. And then finally, describe the community's relationship with the jurisdiction and how it's affected by the policy decisions made by the city council. So we're just going to get into a couple of questions, exercises, just to get folks thinking about communities of interest, what they are and how it could apply. So first question, a group of renters who live downtown testifies to the city. Would this be considered a community of interest? So if we think about this, this is a group of people who we can map. They live downtown, and then they are a group of renters. So they share a policy concern. So yes, they would be considered a community of interest exactly for that reason. So city council could potentially pass ordinances, resolutions relating to renters, rental protection, stuff like that. And then a part of town that has a historic nature, either as a former hub of business, community, or as an area that had been discriminated against through redlining. Should the city prioritize this historical area when drawing maps? So remembering that we can map these areas, and that we do want to make sure that we are protecting the voices of people who are who need to be considered during this process. So absolutely, we would be considering this historic nature or communities who have been historically discriminated against. So we would be considering them. And hopefully we will get testimony from many communities today. And then finally, a statewide group for people who are fans of the San Francisco Giants testifies to the city. Would this be considered a community of interest? And the answer is no. So remembering that this community of interest is actually, it goes beyond the city boundaries, so we can't map it, and it's also unlikely that the city council will have anything to say or impactful on the San Francisco Giants. So unfortunately, no. So how can you give your own testimony? There are multiple ways to do this. You can go to the website and submit your own testimony that way. You can join today and give your testimony at the end of my spiel on this. Or you can send emails or go on Redistricting. So the first example here is a community of interest form. So you can put in all of the information that we ask, and it takes you step by step, and it gives us everything we need to know about your community. Next, you can use Redistricting. So there are two different types of maps that we are asking from the public. First, community of interest maps. So you'll draw your community of interest so we know exactly where you are. And then we are also asking for districted based plans. So you get to draw the city council lines if you want. And this is what we use. Redistricting, it was created at Tufts University to help regular community members draw their own lines and submit it. So let me go ahead and pull up Redistricting right now, and we can just do a quick demo. So I will show you how to draw both a community of interest map and a city council based map. Oh, and sorry, let me go back really fast. So this is how you get there. you go to districtr.org/event/city_of_Napa. And it should take you to this landing page. And I'm going to click on this red button right here so we can go over how to draw a community of interest. So it's super convenient. It takes you right to the city of Napa. You can see that it has its boundaries. You won't be able to draw outside of those boundaries. And in order to zoom in, you just either use your scroll button on your mouse, or you can use these buttons right here. So the plus sign or the minus sign. The minus sign will take us backwards. So let's just start randomly drawing. So up here, these are the buttons that you're going to be using to draw and move the map. This hand, if you click this button, hold down on the map, so you click on the map with your mouse, you can move the map around, and it's going to allow you to adjust the map so you don't accidentally draw something you didn't mean to do. Next, this brush right here allows you to color. So let's go ahead and there we go. So you can see that it's starting to pick a bunch of census blocks. So census blocks are the smallest geographic unit that we use to draw maps, and they cannot be split. So that is what you see when you are drawing your maps. You're seeing census blocks. You can, of course, change the size of the brush. So you can draw a whole bunch at the same time, or you can change it to 1 or whatever number you want, but 1 will be the smallest size. So it means that you're just going to draw 1 census block at a time. And this button right here, it's the eraser. And just like the brush, it allows you to change the size of the eraser. So if you just want to get rid of 1 census block at a time, you have that ability. Or if you want to get rid of a whole bunch, you can absolutely do that as well. Okay, and then this magnifying glass allows you to look at the individual census blocks and get a better sense of who is there. So it breaks down the demographics, which is pretty cool. So let's say this is your, I just randomly drew this, but let's say this is your community of interest. You can then name your community of interest. So name it here. And then you're going to describe your community of interest as well. So remembering those 3 questions that I asked earlier, what makes your community unique? What shared characteristic or bond do you have? What resources do you share? And then how is your community impacted by the city council? And then of course you could draw important places as well. So if there's an area or if there's like a specific place that your community is based around, so maybe it's a church, maybe it's a park, maybe it's a school, you can make note of it in your map, and then you can name it here. So you would name here and then describe how this part, how this area is critical to your community of interest. And then it has different layers. So you can look at demographics of the city as well. So you can, if you want to look at different racial compositions of the city, you can certainly do that. And then evaluation. So this is just going to break down the community of interest that you drew. This is particularly important, the citizens voting age population. We have that there so we can make sure that we are following all requirements under the Federal Voting Rights Act. This is very critical in making sure that we are compliant. So in case you're wondering, that's why we have the citizen voting age population. So once you're happy with how your map looks, you will hit save. And just as a reminder to folks, we can't delete any maps online. So once it's up, it's up. So if you want to come back to it at a different point, you can always press work in progress and save it as a draft. Or you can share directly to the gallery. So once it's up to the gallery, that is considered community of interest testimony, and we will be looking at it as we draw maps throughout this entire process. And let's go back and quickly do a map on City Council. So I'm going to click that purple button. The way that we draw the maps, same exact way as drawing a community of interest. So same buttons, but you'll notice that we now have this population ideal size. That is how big our district should be. And then we have maximum deviation. Under Supreme Court precedent, no district can be more, or the total deviation cannot be 10% or more. So this will tell us how large our deviation is. Let's go ahead and just start randomly drawing a district so we can see how these numbers change and what it looks like. So I clicked the brush and I'm just going to start drawing, and we want to get to just under 20,000. Oh, too much. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this part. So we are pretty close. I'm going to switch to another district now. So the way you do that is just clicking on any of these buttons up here, these colors. So when it's a circle, that's what color you are drawing. Oh, so I don't know if you just saw that, but I accidentally just colored over one of the districts. Did not mean to do that. So when you press this button, this locks in the district, so you can't draw over it. So now, for example, there we go. It does not go over into the blue. So there is the second district. You can see down here, this is how big the deviation is. Districtor is keeping track of how large your districts are and how large the deviation is. So you don't have to do that math. It's so convenient. And then let's take a look again at the demographics. So you can, just like before, take a look at the population might be too small for it to pick up. There we go. So you can change different demographics. And then same with citizen voting age population. So I'll just do that really fast. Show on the map. And then evaluation. So we can look at the different layers. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 being blue, we can see the breakdown of that district. 2, here's that district. And then again, when we are drawing maps, we're using two different sets of data. So the US Census data, and then the citizen voting age population data. And then when you are happy with how your map looks, just as a reminder, you can draw up to 4 city council districts. You don't have to draw all 4. If you only want to draw one, because that's the only one that you care about, then you totally have the ability to do that as well. So once you're happy with how it's saved, you just go to the save button, and again, share to the gallery, or it's a work in progress and you're going to come back to it later. And then of course you want to name it too, so we can better differentiate your map from other people's maps. But if you don't name it, that's fine too. It has an ID number, so it is a unique map when it's submitted. So that is Districtor. I'm happy to take questions at the end of all of this. But let me go ahead and pull back up the presentation, and I'll go ahead and finish that up. So let me just bring it back. There we go. Excellent. And I'm going to kick it over to Tiffany, who will go over the timeline.
Great, thanks so much, Liz. Appreciate the presentation and the details of the map drawing tool and the requirements. I would just like to share where we're at in the process and the additional ways in which you can participate. So as you can see from the slide on the screen now, we are just halfway through the process. Our next hearing is Tuesday, February 8th at 6:30 p.m. I just realized I did not update these slides. Apologies, but the location will actually be via Zoom for the February 8th hearing, as the city has gone to Zoom due to some COVID circumstances. But look forward to you participating on the 8th. This will be another hearing with maps, and we will be conducting our first reading of the ordinance to move forward with final map lines. So your input now is more critical than ever. And again, if you do have comments on the current lines, which our draft map A, which is up for consideration, is the current lines that were established back in 2020. So if you have any testimony, any suggested changes, or if you like the lines, we need to hear that too. So please feel free to share with us that during that hearing as well, or submit your public testimony. It can be written to redistricting@cityofnapa.org via email, and we'll include that in the written record. And then if you can go to the next slide, Liz. Again, here's our redistricting website. There's also a shortcut, www.cityofnapa.org/redistricting. Or if you click our link from the main drop-down page, there's a direct link to the redistricting site where you can view the schedule, you can catch up on the news, you can submit your community of interest worksheet, you can prepare draw your own map using the Districtor tool, or also we have hard copy PDF versions if you prefer to put some ink to paper and submit that as well. You can find your current district, so you can check which district you currently reside. And then of course, resources, which include past recordings of our previous workshops and our previous public hearings, staff reports, copies of submitted public testimony, etc. So on all of this is right available online. And again, if you have any questions, you can always reach out to the city clerk's office at the redistricting@cityofnapa.org email address. And if there are any questions, that does conclude our formal presentation. So if anyone has any questions, I'm looking now. I don't see any hands raised. I do not see any questions in the chat. So I think thank you all. I thank you, Liz, and our interpreters, Elizabeth and Sandra, who have been with us this meeting, this workshop. This workshop will, as mentioned in the beginning, has been recorded and will be published on our website on the redistricting resources page as well. So we thank you, and we look forward to hearing your input on our district lines. So enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.